Today, we're diving into a topic that might surprise you: why failure is actually the secret to success. Now, I know when most people think of failure, they picture it as a roadblock, something to avoid at all costs. It's a word that comes with negative connotations: shame, disappointment, and sometimes even humiliation. But what if I told you that failure is, in fact, one of the most powerful tools for growth and achievement? That's right. Failure isn't a sign that you're doing something wrong. Rather, it's a sign that you're pushing boundaries, testing new ideas, and learning valuable lessons along the way. So today, let's shift the perspective on failure and take a closer look at how it can actually fuel success. We'll explore how embracing failure can transform the way you approach challenges and how it can ultimately lead you to your greatest achievements.
That's such an important point, Ryan. It's easy to think of success as a straight line, an upward trajectory where everything goes according to plan. But in reality, success is often messy, unpredictable, and full of setbacks. Failure is an integral part of that process. Think about the most successful people you know, whether they're entrepreneurs, athletes, or even artists. They didn't achieve their success overnight. They faced failures, sometimes huge ones, along the way. And what sets them apart is how they handled those failures. They didn't let it stop them. Instead, they used it as an opportunity to learn, grow, and adapt. The truth is, failure isn't something to be feared. It's something to be embraced. By accepting failure as part of the journey, you unlock the ability to develop resilience, improve your skills, and refine your strategies.
And that's the key, Priya. Failure isn't the end of the road, it's just a bend in the path. We're not saying that failure should be celebrated as an end goal, but we are saying it should be recognized as a critical stepping stone. The truth is, we learn more from our failures than our successes. When things go wrong, it forces us to analyze what happened, understand what went wrong, and figure out how to do better next time. Whether it's a failed project, a lost opportunity, or even a personal setback, each failure holds within it a lesson that can be applied moving forward. Success, therefore, isn't about avoiding failure, it's about how you respond to it and what you do with those lessons.
Exactly, Ryan. And I think one of the most important things we can do is shift our mindset around failure. Too often, we think of it as a negative experience, something to be ashamed of. But in reality, failure is a learning opportunity that's packed with potential. It's through our failures that we develop the resilience to keep going when things get tough. It's through those moments of struggle and setback that we find out what we're truly capable of. So, what we're really here to talk about today is how to change our approach to failure. How to see it as an essential part of success, not a roadblock. We'll explore how the fear of failure often holds us back, and how embracing it, instead of running from it, can lead to our greatest breakthroughs.
So, what can you expect from today's discussion? Well, as we explore why failure is actually the secret to success, we'll break down how failure isn't just a setback. Instead, it's a critical stepping stone that leads to personal and professional growth. You'll hear stories of successful people who faced massive failures before finding their path to success. And we'll dive into why those failures were not the end of their story, but rather the beginning of their greatest achievements. Whether you're facing failure in your career, relationships, or personal goals, this podcast will give you the tools to see it from a new perspective, one that empowers you to turn failure into a catalyst for change and improvement.
Exactly, Ryan. By the end of this podcast, you'll walk away with a much clearer understanding of how failure can actually be your best teacher. We'll guide you through how to shift your mindset from avoiding failure to embracing it as an integral part of the journey. The fear of failure is something we all face, but it's important to recognize that failures aren't permanent roadblocks. Instead, they're crucial learning experiences that provide insight into what's working and what needs to be adjusted. So, we're not just talking about failure as a concept, but how you can use it strategically to set yourself up for long-term success.
We'll also cover how failure can help you develop resilience and a growth mindset. By embracing failure, you don't just become more adaptable, you become better equipped to face the challenges ahead. In fact, many of the most successful people in the world have faced repeated failures, but it's their ability to bounce back, learn from those experiences, and adapt their strategies that makes all the difference. We'll talk about how you can do the same in your own life.
And that's the exciting part, Ryan. Failure doesn't have to feel like something negative. It's actually an opportunity to grow stronger. Throughout this podcast, we'll be showing you how to take each failure and turn it into a stepping stone toward greater achievement. Whether you're struggling with a setback right now or just want to shift your mindset for future challenges, you'll learn how to make failure work for you. So, get ready to rethink failure and learn how to use it to propel you toward success.
When we talk about success, it's often tied to achieving our goals. And for many of us, that might mean things like financial independence, career milestones, or personal satisfaction. We measure success by how far we've come in these areas. You know, things like buying that dream house, landing the perfect job, or reaching a personal fitness goal. But if we stop there, we miss a deeper and more meaningful aspect of success. Success isn't just about checking things off a list. It's about growth, learning, and becoming a better version of ourselves each day. It's not just about what we achieve, but also about who we become in the process. And that's why defining success is more complex than we often make it out to be.
Exactly, Ryan. Success isn't one size fits all. There are so many different dimensions to it. If we focus only on material success, we're missing the broader picture. Material success might be about wealth, possessions, or status, but that's just one aspect of the whole. What about emotional success? Emotional success is about mastering our emotions, building resilience, and finding inner peace. It's about being able to handle life's ups and downs without losing our sense of self. Think about someone who is emotionally balanced. They might not have the wealth of a billionaire, but they've achieved something just as significant: emotional stability, contentment, and self-awareness.
That's a really important point, Priya. And then we have intellectual success. This is about the growth of our minds, the pursuit of knowledge, the development of critical thinking, and continuous learning. Intellectual success might look different for everyone. For some, it's about earning degrees or becoming an expert in a particular field. For others, it's about becoming more open-minded, expanding their horizons, and deepening their understanding of the world. Intellectual success isn't just about accumulating information. It's about using that knowledge to make informed decisions and solve problems in creative ways.
Absolutely, Ryan. And let's not forget social success. Social success is about the quality of our relationships, building meaningful connections with others, contributing to our communities, and developing strong support networks. It's not just about having a wide circle of acquaintances, but about nurturing deep, genuine friendships and being there for others. Social success is also about how we contribute to the collective good, whether that's through our work, our values, or the way we engage with the world around us. And in today's connected world, social success often goes hand in hand with our ability to collaborate and communicate effectively with diverse groups of people.
Exactly, Priya. When we look at success from these different angles, material, emotional, intellectual, and social, it becomes clear that it's not just about achieving one goal or another. It's about balancing all these aspects and recognizing that success is a dynamic, ongoing process. You might achieve one goal in a particular area, but that doesn't mean you've reached the peak of success. Success evolves with us as we grow, face challenges, and learn new things along the way. When we think about failure, it's important to understand that failure isn't really about being unsuccessful in life. It's about not achieving a particular outcome at a certain point in time. The key word here is outcome. You can fail to achieve a goal, but that doesn't mean you're a failure as a person. Too often we make the mistake of defining ourselves by a single failure, but failure is just an event. It's a moment in time, not a permanent label on who we are. Failure doesn't define us. It's simply a part of the process. In fact, some of the most successful people in the world have faced repeated failures, yet they've never seen themselves as failures. They saw those moments as temporary setbacks, lessons in the making.
Exactly, Ryan. And that's the crucial distinction we need to make between failure and being a failure. Failure is an event, a situation where things didn't go as planned, but it doesn't define your entire life or your worth as a person. Being a failure, however, is something entirely different. When we start thinking of ourselves as failures, we're internalizing the setback. We begin to see it as a reflection of our capabilities, or worse, our identity. But here's the truth. Failure is not a reflection of who we are. It's a reflection of something that didn't work at a given time. And that's important because it means there's always room to try again, improve, and learn.
That's so powerful, Priya. When we label ourselves as failures, we carry that label with us. But what if we looked at failure from a more constructive angle? What if we saw failure as an opportunity to gather data, analyze what went wrong, and try again with more insight? In fact, each time we fail, we're actually accumulating valuable information that will help us in the future. Failure tells us where we need to adjust, what didn't work, and where we can make changes moving forward. But none of that means we've failed as a person. Failure is just a part of the journey to success.
Absolutely, Ryan. And I think it's also important to realize that failure is not an indication that we're incapable. It's just feedback. It's feedback that tells us we need to adjust our approach, rethink our strategy, or perhaps try a different method altogether. Every failure carries with it a lesson. And once we understand that, failure becomes less daunting. It becomes a tool we can use to grow stronger and more resilient. So, when we face failure, instead of internalizing it as a personal flaw, we can view it as a stepping stone. Every great success story is built on a foundation of previous failures.
Exactly. And it's in these moments when we fail that we truly learn about ourselves. Failure challenges us to grow, and the most successful people are those who understand that failure is just a part of the equation. It doesn't diminish their worth or potential. It simply provides them with the lessons they need to adjust, improve, and ultimately achieve success. The next time you fail, remember that it's not a permanent label. It's just a temporary event that holds the potential for growth and transformation. There's a common misconception that failure equals defeat. We've all heard it before. When something doesn't work out, people say things like, "You've failed," or "You've reached the end." The reality, though, is that failure isn't the end of the road. It's simply a detour, a part of the process. Think about it. Every single person who has ever achieved something significant has faced failure at some point. Whether it was in their career, personal life, or business ventures, failure was a part of their journey. So, to say failure equals defeat is a huge misconception. Failure is just another step in the process that leads to success.
Exactly, Ryan. When we fail, it's easy to feel like we've reached a dead end, especially if we've invested a lot of time, effort, or emotion into something. But failure doesn't have to be the end of the story. It's often just a pause, a moment of reflection before we figure out the next step. The truth is, some of the most successful people have failed many times before they found their breakthrough. It wasn't a sign to stop, but rather an opportunity to learn, refine their approach, and try again. We see failure as a setback, but successful individuals see it as part of the journey, a detour, not the destination.
And that's the mindset shift we need to embrace. We can't let failure define us or convince us that it's the final chapter in our story. The key is to keep moving forward, even after experiencing failure. For instance, Thomas Edison, one of the most famous inventors in history, failed thousands of times before successfully inventing the light bulb. But he didn't view those failures as defeat. He saw each one as a step closer to the final success. It's this kind of resilience and perspective that separates those who give up from those who go on to achieve great things.
Absolutely, Ryan. And even beyond inventors or entrepreneurs, think about athletes. The greatest sports figures like Michael Jordan or Serena Williams have faced countless failures, lost games, and endured injuries. But each failure was an opportunity for growth, for learning, for improvement. They didn't stop at failure. They used it to fuel their passion and refine their skills. In fact, many athletes will tell you that their most significant lessons came from their losses, not their victories. And the same goes for us, no matter what field we're in. Failure is part of the journey, and it's what helps us reach our true potential.
Exactly. So if we're able to shift our mindset and recognize that failure is not the end of the road but a necessary part of the process, we can embrace it more fully. Instead of letting it discourage us, we can let it motivate us. It becomes a learning opportunity, a way to build the resilience and skills needed to ultimately succeed. The more we face failure with this mindset, the more equipped we are to handle future challenges and ultimately achieve our long-term goals. Failure is an incredibly powerful tool for learning. Every mistake, every setback carries with it an opportunity to learn something valuable. Think about it. If we never failed, we would never know what didn't work. And without that knowledge, we'd be stuck in a cycle of mediocrity. Failure pushes us to step back, assess the situation, and refine our strategies. When we fail, we gain insight into our actions, our decisions, and our processes. We learn what to avoid, what to improve, and what works better next time. So failure doesn't just mean we didn't succeed, it means we've gathered crucial information that helps us move closer to success.
Exactly, Ryan. Failure forces us into a position of self-reflection. When things don't go as planned, it's natural to feel disappointed, but it's also a moment to pause and analyze. We take a step back and think, what did I do wrong? What could I have done differently? This kind of self-reflection is what makes failure so valuable. It allows us to identify the areas where we can improve. For instance, if a business venture fails, it's not just the loss of money. It's the opportunity to understand what went wrong, whether it was the market, the strategy, or the execution. And once we analyze that, we can adapt and apply that knowledge to future endeavors.
Right, Priya. And this process of learning from failure helps us refine not just our skills, but also our mindset. Think about it. When we fail and reflect, we become more resilient. We start to see failure not as something to fear, but as a necessary part of growth. In fact, many of the world's most successful people credit their failures for shaping their mindset. They learn to approach challenges with curiosity instead of fear. Every failure became a chance to learn something new, a chance to pivot, and a chance to refine their approach. And that mindset shift is key to long-term success.
Exactly. And that's why failure is such an important part of the learning process. It teaches us to adapt. When we fail, we often find ourselves asking questions like, what could I have done differently? Or what can I learn from this experience? These questions force us to think critically and approach the problem from different angles. By learning from our mistakes, we're not just getting better at a specific task or goal, we're getting better at handling challenges in general. And the more we fail and learn, the more confident we become in our ability to face future obstacles.
That's so true. Failure teaches us how to fail better, if you will. Each time we fail, we gather more data about how to improve our performance. This constant cycle of failure, reflection, and growth accelerates our personal and professional development. Without failure, we would never have the opportunity to test our limits and refine our skills. And when we embrace that process, failure becomes less intimidating. Instead of seeing it as a negative, we start to see it as an essential part of the learning journey. Let's start by looking at someone like Thomas Edison. Edison is often remembered for inventing the light bulb, but what many people don't realize is that he failed over 1,000 times before achieving that success. Think about that. Over 1,000 attempts, each one a failure. But Edison never saw those as setbacks. Each failure was simply a step closer to success. In fact, he famously said, "I have not failed. I've just found 1,000 ways that won't work." That mindset, seeing failure not as a defeat but as a lesson, is what ultimately led him to create one of the most significant inventions in history. Every failure gave him valuable information that helped him refine his approach until he succeeded.
Exactly, Ryan. Edison's persistence in the face of failure is a perfect example of how failure can be a key part of innovation. He didn't allow his failures to define him or deter him. Instead, he viewed them as part of the learning process. And the same goes for Steve Jobs. Jobs, the co-founder of Apple, was famously ousted from the very company he started. That moment seemed like the ultimate failure. He was kicked out of the company he helped build from the ground up. But this failure didn't end his career. Instead, it became a turning point. It forced him to think outside the box and to reevaluate what he truly wanted to accomplish in the world.
Right, Priya. Jobs didn't let that failure define him. In fact, it might have been the best thing that ever happened to him. After leaving Apple, he founded Next and acquired Pixar, both of which played crucial roles in shaping his future success. When he eventually returned to Apple, he came back with new perspectives and ideas, which revolutionized the technology industry. The iPod, iPhone, iPad, they're all products of the lessons he learned from his failures. Without that experience of failure, he might not have had the vision and innovation to change the tech world forever.
Absolutely. If Jobs had stayed at Apple, perhaps we wouldn't have seen the breakthroughs he later became known for. That failure forced him to think differently, to adapt, and to come back stronger. In the end, his failure was just the catalyst for his greatest achievements. And this is a common thread among successful people. They often experience major setbacks, but rather than letting those setbacks stop them, they use them as fuel to push forward. Jobs' story is a testament to the idea that failure isn't the end. It's often the beginning of something bigger and better.
And that's the key takeaway from these stories. Success doesn't come without failure. In fact, some of the world's greatest successes have been built on the foundation of past failures. Thomas Edison, Steve Jobs, these figures didn't give up in the face of failure. They understood that each setback was part of the journey and that failure was essential for growth. If they had given up after their first, second, or even 1,000th failure, the world would have never seen their groundbreaking innovations. One of the most powerful things failure does is build resilience. Think about it like lifting weights in a gym. When you lift a heavy weight, it challenges your muscles, making them sore and fatigued. But over time, your muscles grow stronger and you're able to handle heavier weights. In the same way, failure challenges us emotionally. Every time we face a setback, it's like our emotional muscles are being tested. At first, it might be tough. It might even feel like we can't take any more. But each time we face failure and push through, we grow stronger, more resilient. We start to build the emotional strength necessary to handle even bigger challenges in the future.
Exactly, Ryan. Resilience is all about how we respond to adversity, and failure is one of the most effective ways to build it. When we fail, it forces us to confront our fears and vulnerabilities. We have to pick ourselves up, reassess our approach, and try again. Each time we do this, we build our capacity to handle disappointment and setbacks without giving up. The more we fail and bounce back, the more we develop a mindset of persistence and determination. And that's what makes us resilient. Our ability to keep going even when things don't go as planned.
And resilience isn't just about bouncing back. It's about bouncing back stronger. Each time we fail, we not only learn from the experience, but also become better equipped to face future challenges. We start to see failure less as something to avoid and more as an opportunity to test our limits. And every time we succeed after a failure, we reinforce the belief that we can overcome anything. This is how people like Oprah Winfrey, J.K. Rowling, and even Elon Musk have built their resilience. They've faced countless failures, but they've never given up because they've built the emotional muscle to keep pushing forward.
That's so true, Ryan. And resilience also means developing a mindset that sees challenges as opportunities for growth. For instance, when we fail, instead of thinking, "This is it, I can't do this anymore," we begin to think, "What can I learn from this? How can I adjust and move forward?" That mindset shift is a huge part of building resilience. It's not about avoiding failure. It's about embracing it as a part of the process and using it to make ourselves stronger. Resilient people don't just survive setbacks, they thrive in the face of them.
And that's why resilience is such an important trait to develop. Because no matter what field we're in, no matter how successful we become, failure is inevitable. But it's how we respond to failure that sets us apart. The stronger our resilience, the better we'll be at navigating life's challenges. And that strength comes from building our emotional muscles through each failure we experience. So, next time you face a setback, remember, it's not just a failure, it's an opportunity to get stronger and more resilient. Now, let's dive into the concept of the growth mindset. This term was coined by psychologist Carol Dweck, and it refers to the belief that our abilities and intelligence are not fixed. They can be developed over time through effort, hard work, and perseverance. People with a growth mindset don't see their skills as innate or unchangeable. They believe that with practice and learning, they can improve in any area they set their mind to. This mindset is absolutely crucial when it comes to understanding the role of failure. Instead of seeing failure as a reflection of their abilities or a permanent setback, people with a growth mindset view failure as a necessary part of the process, a way to learn and progress.
Exactly, Ryan. The growth mindset shifts our perspective entirely. Instead of fearing failure, we embrace it because we understand that every failure is an opportunity to learn. People with a growth mindset don't give up after they fail. They double down and use the failure to develop their skills. It's about believing that we can always improve, and that our mistakes aren't permanent. They're just a stepping stone. This is why the growth mindset is so powerful. It doesn't let failure discourage us. Instead, it fuels our drive to keep trying, keep learning, and keep growing.
And this idea of learning from failure is at the heart of the growth mindset. For example, let's say you're learning a new skill. Maybe it's playing an instrument, coding, or public speaking. Early on, you might fail, and you might feel frustrated or discouraged. But someone with a growth mindset doesn't see that as a sign that they're bad at it. Instead, they recognize that they haven't mastered it yet. They understand that every failure is just a feedback loop, telling them what needs to be improved. That's the mindset shift, from viewing failure as a defeat to seeing it as an opportunity for development.
Right, Ryan. And the growth mindset doesn't just apply to skills. It's also about resilience and persistence. When we face challenges or setbacks, instead of thinking, I'm just not cut out for this, we think, I can get better at this. I just need to keep working at it. This mindset is essential for progress because it helps us develop the mental strength to persist through failure. The more we fail, the more we learn, and the more we develop the skills needed to overcome even bigger challenges in the future. So, the growth mindset doesn't just change how we see failure, it transforms how we approach life's challenges in general.
Exactly, Priya. The growth mindset is about embracing the idea that we're always in the process of becoming, always evolving. And failure plays a key role in that. It's not something to avoid, but something to learn from. If we view failure through the lens of a growth mindset, we begin to see it as a natural and necessary part of the learning process rather than a roadblock. So as we continue to fail and learn, we're not just getting better at the task at hand. We're also building the resilience and perseverance that will help us tackle future challenges with confidence. Now let's contrast the growth mindset with the fixed mindset. A fixed mindset, as the name suggests, is the belief that our abilities and intelligence are static, that we're born with a certain amount of talent or skill, and that's all we're ever going to have. People with a fixed mindset often see failure as something to avoid at all costs. They don't want to make mistakes because they see failure as a reflection of their limitations, something that confirms they're not good enough. This belief can lead to a fear of challenges. Instead of taking on new opportunities where failure is a possibility, they might shy away from them to protect their self-image.
Exactly, Ryan. People with a fixed mindset often think that if they fail, it means they're just not cut out for something. That failure is a sign that they've reached the limits of their abilities. So instead of viewing failure as a learning experience, they see it as a confirmation that they aren't good enough, which can make them avoid taking risks or trying new things. They may stick to what they already know because it feels safe, and they fear that failure would expose their weaknesses. This kind of thinking can be really limiting because it stops them from growing or improving in the face of adversity.
Right, Priya. The problem with a fixed mindset is that it traps people in their current abilities. They don't realize that with effort, practice, and learning from failure, they can actually grow and improve. Instead, they're stuck in a cycle of avoiding challenges because they're afraid of failure. On the other hand, people with a growth mindset see failure differently. They don't fear failure because they understand that it's part of the process of getting better. Instead of feeling defeated, they embrace failure as an opportunity to learn, to evolve, and to improve. So while someone with a fixed mindset might shy away from failure, someone with a growth mindset welcomes it as a stepping stone toward growth.
Exactly. The beauty of the growth mindset is that it transforms failure from something to be feared into something to be celebrated. When we fail, it's not a permanent mark on our abilities. It's just feedback. People with a growth mindset use failure to adjust their strategies, improve their techniques, and become better. This mindset fosters resilience and persistence because it helps us understand that abilities are not fixed. They can be developed. So, instead of avoiding failure, we start seeking it out as a way to test our limits and grow.
That's a powerful distinction. People with a fixed mindset might avoid failure, but those with a growth mindset actively engage with it because they know it's an essential part of the learning process. This shift in thinking allows them to embrace challenges, take risks, and ultimately achieve more than they thought possible. So the key takeaway here is that how we view failure, whether as a threat or as an opportunity, has a direct impact on how much we grow and succeed. With a growth mindset, failure isn't the end. It's just another step in the journey. Now let's take a closer look at how embracing failure leads to continuous improvement. When we adopt a growth mindset, we understand that failure is part of the journey, not a roadblock. The growth mindset encourages us to embrace challenges and persist through adversity. Each failure we encounter is not a setback. It's an opportunity to refine our approaches, learn new things, and ultimately move closer to mastery. The more we fail, the more we learn about ourselves, our strategies, and the areas where we need to improve. It's like sharpening a blade. Each failure helps us become more precise and effective in what we do, ultimately leading to greater mastery in the long run.
Exactly, Ryan. The more we embrace failure, the more we realize that it's not something to avoid, but something to incorporate into our growth process. When we fail, we're forced to rethink our approach, to analyze what went wrong, and to figure out how to do it better next time. This ongoing process of trial, error, and learning is how we improve and get closer to our goals. Failure teaches us patience, adaptability, and resilience, traits that are essential for continuous improvement. By viewing failure as a learning opportunity, we start to develop the mindset that success isn't just about getting it right the first time.
Right, Priya. This is where the concept of failing forward comes into play. Instead of seeing failure as something that sets us back, we start to see it as something that moves us forward. Every time we fail, we gain more information about what works and what doesn't. This process helps us make smarter decisions and improve our strategies. So the more we fail, the better we get at what we do. We get stronger, wiser, and more prepared for the challenges ahead. It's all part of the journey to mastery. For instance, athletes fail constantly, whether it's missing a shot, falling short of a goal, or getting injured. But these failures don't stop them. They use those experiences to adjust their technique and approach, ultimately improving their performance.
Absolutely. It's the same in every field, not just sports. In business, for example, entrepreneurs often fail when they launch a new product or service. But instead of giving up, they learn from their mistakes, tweak their strategies, and try again. Over time, these small improvements add up, leading to bigger successes. And it's not just about external achievements. On a personal level, when we embrace failure, we also build emotional intelligence. We become better at handling adversity and setbacks, which helps us stay motivated and focused on our goals. So, instead of fearing failure, we begin to see it as an essential component of success.
Exactly, Priya. When we start seeing failure as a part of the learning process, we create a feedback loop of continuous improvement. Each failure is simply a piece of the puzzle, helping us get closer to the bigger picture. So, rather than seeing failure as an obstacle, we start to welcome it as a necessary part of growth. It helps us refine our skills, improve our strategies, and increase our chances of success in the long run. And when we adopt this mindset, we stop fearing failure and start embracing it as a stepping stone toward our ultimate goals. Let's take a look at some practical examples of failure leading to success, especially in the business world. One of the most famous stories is that of J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter series. Before becoming a global phenomenon, Rowling faced rejection after rejection from publishers. In fact, over a dozen publishers turned down her manuscript. Can you imagine? The book that would go on to change the literary world was initially deemed not good enough. But rather than giving up, Rowling persisted. She saw each rejection as part of the process and kept submitting her manuscript. Finally, one publisher took a chance on her, and the rest is history. The failure she experienced didn't define her. It helped shape her path to incredible success.
Exactly, Ryan. J.K. Rowling's story shows us that failure isn't the end of the road. It's often just the beginning of something bigger. In fact, many successful entrepreneurs and creators experience failures along the way. Take Walt Disney, for example. He was fired from a newspaper early in his career for lack of imagination. Can you believe that? The very thing he would become famous for was criticized as his weakness. On top of that, Disney went bankrupt multiple times before creating the iconic Disney empire we know today. But instead of being discouraged, Disney saw each failure as a lesson and used it to fuel his creativity and drive. His persistence in the face of adversity led to the creation of one of the most successful entertainment empires in the world.
Right, Priya. And these stories are just the tip of the iceberg. There are countless entrepreneurs and business leaders who faced failure but used it as a springboard to success. Think about Steve Jobs, who was ousted from Apple, the company he co-founded, only to return years later and lead Apple to become one of the most valuable companies in the world. Or consider the story of Henry Ford, who failed multiple times before successfully launching the Ford Motor Company, revolutionizing the automobile industry. These failures didn't defeat them, they propelled them forward. They learned from each failure and came back stronger, better prepared to succeed.
That's the key takeaway here. Failure is often part of the process of becoming successful. It's easy to look at someone like Walt Disney or Steve Jobs and think their success came easily, but their journeys were full of setbacks and failures. What made them different is their ability to embrace failure and use it to drive them forward. It's the resilience to keep going even when things don't go as planned. If they had given up after their first or second failure, we wouldn't know their names today. But because they kept going, they turned their failures into stepping stones toward monumental success.
Exactly, Priya. The stories of these business icons show us that failure doesn't define us. It refines us. Each rejection, each bankruptcy, each setback gave them the opportunity to learn, adapt, and improve. It's through these challenges that they were able to develop the vision, creativity, and persistence that led to their success. So the next time you face failure, remember that it could very well be the first step towards something bigger and better. Embrace it, learn from it, and use it as fuel for your next attempt. Now, let's shift gears and talk about personal failures. We often think of failure in terms of business or professional setbacks, but personal failures, whether in relationships, career decisions, or even health challenges, can teach us some of the most valuable lessons. Think about it. When a relationship ends or we make a poor career choice, it might feel like the end of the world at that moment. But with time, we often realize that those failures help us grow in ways we never anticipated. For example, a failed relationship might teach us more about what we need in a partner and help us understand ourselves better. Similarly, a career setback might lead us to reassess our passions and ultimately lead us down a more fulfilling path.
Exactly, Ryan. Personal failures can be incredibly painful, but they also provide us with deep insights about who we are and what we truly want. We often think of failure as a negative experience, but if we look closely, it's these very challenges that help us evolve into stronger, more resilient individuals. For example, dealing with health challenges can completely change our perspective on life. We become more appreciative of our bodies, more conscious of the choices we make, and better able to empathize with others facing similar struggles. These personal failures, no matter how hard they may seem at the time, often lay the groundwork for personal transformation and growth.
Right, Priya. When we go through tough times, it's easy to get caught up in the emotional pain of failure. But it's important to remember that these experiences aren't just random. They have a purpose. Each setback in our personal lives teaches us important lessons that we might not have learned otherwise. Maybe we learn patience, or we develop better communication skills after a challenging relationship. Maybe we gain a deeper sense of empathy after facing a health crisis or a personal loss. These lessons stick with us and shape the way we approach future challenges.
Exactly. Personal failures are powerful because they often come with a deep emotional connection. When we experience something deeply personal, like a health issue or a difficult relationship, it forces us to look inward and reflect on what went wrong, what we could have done differently, and what we can learn from the experience. That reflection is key to our growth. We often come out of these experiences more self-aware, more compassionate, and more equipped to handle whatever comes our way in the future. So, while personal failures may feel crushing at the time, they can be the catalyst for positive change in our lives.
Absolutely. And here's the key point. Personal failure often leads to growth because it forces us to face our vulnerabilities and develop new strengths. We become more empathetic, more patient, and more adaptable to future challenges. So the next time we face a personal failure, whether it's a difficult breakup, a job loss, or a health scare, let's try to see it not just as a failure, but as a powerful opportunity to grow. Because as we've seen in both personal and professional contexts, failure often makes us stronger and better prepared for the future. Let's dive into the tech world now, where failure is often seen as a stepping stone to innovation. Take companies like Apple, Microsoft, and Amazon, for instance. In their early years, each of these tech giants faced significant setbacks. Apple, for example, launched the Apple III in 1980, but the product was a disaster. Technical issues, poor sales, and a lack of market interest. Microsoft's early attempts to get into the hardware business also flopped. And Amazon? Well, it didn't start as the global marketplace we know today. In fact, Amazon initially sold only books, and there were numerous failures and struggles along the way. At one point, many people doubted its potential to become anything more than a small online bookstore.
Right, Ryan. But the key here is that each of these companies didn't let their early failures define them. Instead, they used those failures to fuel innovation. For example, after Apple's early product failures, they learned a valuable lesson in design and user experience, which later contributed to the development of iconic products like the iPod, iPhone, and iPad. They rethought their approach to both hardware and software, focusing on quality and the end-user experience. Similarly, Microsoft, after facing struggles in hardware, doubled down on software, leading to the success of Windows and Office products, which became household names. These companies weren't just failing. They were learning, adapting, and improving their strategies.
Exactly, Priya. And then there's Amazon, which faced many obstacles in its early years. People didn't believe in Jeff Bezos' vision of an online marketplace for everything, and the company almost went bankrupt in the early 2000s. But instead of giving up, Bezos embraced the failure and used it to refine his business model. Amazon evolved into a customer-centric powerhouse, focusing on providing exceptional service, which ultimately led to its massive growth. The company wasn't afraid to take risks and innovate, even after facing early financial struggles and skepticism from critics. These failures didn't stop them. They were an integral part of their journey.
Absolutely. These tech companies remind us that failure is often a prerequisite for success. Each failure provided valuable insights that helped these businesses grow stronger and more innovative. If Apple had never faced the failure of the Apple III, they might never have developed the design-focused approach that made their later products so successful. Similarly, Amazon's financial struggles and early failures shaped the customer-centric business model that's now a key part of their success. The takeaway here is that failure isn't the end of the road. It's often the catalyst for innovation and growth.
Exactly. The tech world is full of stories like this. Companies that have faced failures but used them to rethink, innovate, and improve. These companies didn't let early setbacks stop them. Instead, they saw those failures as opportunities to evolve and stay ahead of the competition. They embraced the lessons that failure provided, leading them to eventually become industry leaders. So, if you're in tech, or really in any field, remember that failure can often be the best teacher, pushing you to innovate and grow in ways you never thought possible. Now, let's talk about something that holds so many of us back: fear of failure. It's an emotion that we all experience, and it often stems from the fear of judgment, shame, or disappointment. We worry about what others will think if we fail, and we fear the potential consequences. This fear can be paralyzing, making us hesitant to take risks or pursue new opportunities. But what we need to understand is that fear of failure is a natural feeling. It's something that everyone, even the most successful people, experiences. The key, however, is not letting that fear control us or prevent us from stepping outside our comfort zones.
Exactly, Ryan. The fear of failure is something that can stop us from reaching our full potential. It's a survival instinct. Our brain is wired to protect us from harm, and failure can feel like a threat. But here's the thing. When we allow that fear to dictate our actions, we limit ourselves. We avoid taking chances, trying new things, or pushing ourselves to grow. If we let fear take the wheel, we're essentially choosing comfort over growth. The problem is, true growth and achievement never happen in our comfort zones. So, while fear is natural, it's important to recognize it and not let it stop us from taking calculated risks and pursuing our goals.
Right, Priya. And this is where mindset plays such a huge role. When we view failure as a learning opportunity, the fear of it starts to lose its grip on us. Instead of seeing failure as something to avoid at all costs, we start seeing it as a necessary step in the process of success. The fear begins to feel less overwhelming when we know that failure won't define us. It will teach us, shape us, and make us stronger. In fact, the more we fail, the more we realize that we have the ability to bounce back, learn, and improve. This shift in perspective is powerful because it frees us from the constraints of fear and allows us to take bold steps toward our goals.
Exactly, Ryan. It's all about reframing how we see failure. Instead of looking at it as something that's going to destroy us, we can look at it as a stepping stone. Every time we face failure, we can ask ourselves, what did I learn from this? What can I do differently next time? When we stop seeing failure as a reflection of our worth and start seeing it as an opportunity for growth, the fear of failure begins to diminish. And here's another thing. By taking action, even in the face of fear, we build resilience. We prove to ourselves that failure is not the end. It's just part of the process. The more we face our fears, the less power they have over us.
Right. And it's important to remember that everyone experiences fear. It's not something exclusive to a select few, it's a universal emotion. But what sets successful people apart is their ability to move forward despite that fear. They don't wait for fear to disappear. They acknowledge it, confront it, and push through it. Fear doesn't go away, but as we keep facing it, we become better at managing it. We learn to make decisions despite the fear, take risks even when we're uncertain, and trust that the lessons we learn from failure are far more valuable than the comfort of staying where we are. So, don't let fear hold you back. Acknowledge it, learn from it, and let it be a catalyst for your growth. Now let's talk about how we can reframe failure. Instead of viewing it as something negative or a reflection of our inadequacy, try to see it as a process. Failure isn't the end, it's actually data, feedback on what didn't work and what you can improve. Think about it this way. When you fail, you gain valuable information. You learn what didn't resonate, what strategies didn't succeed, and what you need to adjust moving forward. Rather than labeling yourself a failure, you can view each setback as an opportunity to refine your approach. In fact, failure helps you eliminate the things that don't work so that you can focus on what does. Exactly, Priya. When we look at failure as a tool for growth rather than a setback, we take the fear out of it. It no longer holds us back because we understand that failure isn't something to be ashamed of. It's part of the journey. Every time we fail, we get closer to understanding what works and what doesn't. It's like taking a detour. While it might slow us down temporarily, it actually brings us closer to our destination. We learn more from our mistakes than from our successes, because mistakes force us to think critically and adapt. The ability to reframe failure is what makes us resilient and capable of achieving long-term success. Exactly, Priya. When you stop fearing failure and start seeing it as an integral part of the journey, everything changes. You stop avoiding risks and start embracing challenges because you know that, no matter what happens, you'll learn something valuable. And that's the power of reframing failure. It stops being a roadblock and becomes a stepping stone to your next breakthrough. Every time you fail, you get stronger, smarter, and more capable. So, let go of the fear, embrace the process, and trust that failure will guide you to your ultimate success. Now let's dive into some practical techniques to help overcome the fear of failure. The first technique is to start small. One of the best ways to reduce the overwhelming fear of failure is by taking calculated risks in smaller, manageable steps. You don't have to jump into something huge right away. Start by testing new ideas, trying out smaller projects, or tackling smaller goals that push you out of your comfort zone. This way, you gain experience, learn from minor setbacks, and build your confidence gradually. These smaller failures will help you grow without the paralyzing fear of taking a giant leap. Remember, it's about learning along the way, and starting small can make the process less daunting.
That's such a great point, Ryan. The second technique I'd suggest is focusing on the process rather than just the outcome. When we get fixated on the end result, whether it's success, approval, or recognition, we often put too much pressure on ourselves, and that fear of failing can become overwhelming. Instead, focus on the journey. Embrace the learning experience at each stage, whether things go according to plan or not. By focusing on the process, you remove the anxiety around achieving perfection or a specific result. This way, you can appreciate each small victory and gain valuable insights along the way, even if the outcome isn't what you expected.
Absolutely, Priya. When you shift your focus to the process, the pressure to succeed diminishes. Failure isn't about disappointing others or missing out on an ideal outcome. It's simply part of the natural process of improvement. If you focus on learning and growing at every step, you reduce the stress of needing everything to be perfect from the start. Every failure becomes a chance to refine your approach, adjust, and try again. It's not the destination, but the growth along the way that truly counts.
And here's another important tip. Surround yourself with supportive people who encourage growth and learning, rather than just celebrating success. When you're around individuals who value effort, persistence, and learning from failure, it makes it easier to overcome your own fear. Supportive people help normalize failure. They make it okay to fail, as long as you keep learning and improving. Being in a positive environment, where failures are seen as lessons rather than setbacks, can make a huge difference in your mindset. When you have people around you who are also willing to embrace failure and use it to grow, it creates a culture of resilience and continuous improvement.
Exactly. When you surround yourself with positive influences, people who understand that failure is part of the growth process, it helps you see failure differently. You're not alone in your journey, and the fear of failure becomes less intimidating when you know you have a support system that encourages you. Whether it's a mentor, a group of like-minded peers, or even just friends who understand the value of persistence, these people will help you push through challenges. They won't let you dwell on your failures. Instead, they'll encourage you to move forward, learn from mistakes, and keep striving for improvement.